Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie, and I am joined once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. How are you, sir?
And I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to be back here. And I mean, I guess I just have one question. Where the fuck have you been? Where have I been? This is both of our faults for sure. But
yeah.
This is the longest we have gone without podcasting.
I'm pretty sure we just went a month. I'm pretty sure that we recorded our Halloween episode, Halloween Kills, I believe was on October 25th. And as we sit here tonight, it is Wednesday, November 24th, the night before Thanksgiving. So yeah, it's been a month, which fucking blows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had to go and grow up and have kids and jobs and stuff like that.
I did. That's true. And since we last spoke, I got reelected. No, there was an election day in there. Yeah.
I don't think I had an opportunity to officially congratulate you. That's amazing. I think I saw it not even on your page, but maybe your wife's Facebook page or something. I didn't see any self-celebratory posts that I noticed, but that's awesome news, man. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah,
Supreme Chancellor, right? That's the.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Got it. Of Twinsburg. Yes.
That's exactly right. No, I didn't do any gloating because, quite frankly, I was unopposed, and so it was a really easy election to win.
I would have run if I had any gumption.
I suppose that means I'm doing a halfway decent job in that, if nobody's going to come against me, that I'm doing, I'm not doing a terrible job. How about that?
If you lost against nobody, then I would walk away with my tail between my legs if I were you.
Ironically enough, last night, it's funny you said that, I was watching Brewster's Millions. And which, of course,
great movie.
Which is a great movie and holds up really well. And of course, the plot line of that movie is Monty Brewster. As part of his shenanigans, he comes up with this campaign slogan of none of the above. He wants people to vote for nobody in the election. Again, if you haven't seen that movie, you need to stop listening to this podcast and go watch that movie. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I just remember wishing that I had a scenario where I was given $30 million. Was it $30 million? He had to spend $30 million in 30 days. And if he did, he got $300 million.
$300 million. Yes.
And he bought the Cubs or some shit like that. Right.
Yeah. It's got a great cast. John Candy is his buddy in it. It's a really good movie. And again, it holds up really well.
For sure.
So, what else is you got big plans for Thanksgiving?
We're staying local this year. Nothing crazy. Just going to go over to some family's house and get drunk on tryptophan and other things and watch some football. Of course, the Cowboys and the Lions. Those are the two teams, right, that play every Thanksgiving, I believe.
I think they play every Thanksgiving. Yep.
So I'll be looking forward to that, but nothing crazy. I mean, I sort of predicted this weekend is going to go really fast. Like it's not, you're going to blink and it's going to be Monday already. So, but that's good. It's all good stuff. What about you guys?
We head over to my parents' house and my family and my brother's family, and then my in-laws go over. So we go and we do 3 turkeys, and so we'll do probably a 12 or 14 pounder in the smoker, and then we'll do another 14 or 16 pounds in the fryer, and then we'll do 22 or 26 pounds in the oven. And we make enough where everybody can have leftovers, and this way we just eat once and we get together, and as long as we don't talk politics, we're okay.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is equally challenging on our side in this family. There's usually very opposed political views that are shared, and a lot of heated arguments. And that's about the time where I excuse myself and
go pour a drink, right?
Go take a 3-hour shit or go pour a drink or whatever the case may be. But no, it's all good. But yeah, these kind of gatherings are ripe for such conversations.
Yes, for sure.
But hey, I feel
yes.
like before we kind of get moving with this, I feel like I need to take a little bit of a step back because I re-listened as I know that you did to our last podcast, which was the review for Halloween Kills, and I gotta say I was really excited about that. If I could be really snobbish and pat this podcast on the back for a second, like I had a great time with that, and I think we really kicked ass on that podcast. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was really a great experience to be able to review a brand new movie after having watched it a couple times and taking notes and really observing it. And I was really psyched that we were both on the same page about that movie, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that came away from that with different experiences. And I don't know. I really enjoyed that. That might be one of the more enjoyable podcasts I think that we've done so far.
Yeah, it was funny. Yes, I did listen to it as well. I really think, and I agree with everything that you just said there. I think, quite frankly, that the kind of really cool part about that was it was a brand new movie, but it was also a movie that we could watch on Peacock, right? And so go back and
Yeah.
rewatch it multiple times, without actually having to pay multiple times and going to the theater and this, that, and the other thing. And you, if I remember correctly, you even had both experiences, right? So you saw it once in the theater and then you got to come home and watch it on Peacock as well, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really important for me personally to see this movie in the theater. Any movie that or any franchise or any movie that I really like or respect, I try to take in the entire experience as it was meant to be. And so I did see it in the theater, but it was really nice to be able to come home and watch it on Peacock as well, because I think, as we talked about before, I can't sit through a movie the first time and really understand everything that happened and be able to give a thorough review. Like, I have to watch it a couple times. And so to be able to go to the theater and then come home and rewatch it and watch it with more of a critical eye was a really great experience. And it really helped prepare us for, I think, what was a really good podcast. So yeah, and I think, not to retread all that stuff, but I think we both really liked that movie. And I know from my perspective, it was very encouraging to see a sequel to a movie that I was really excited about and give me a little bit of fire, which kind of ties nicely into where I think we're going with this, which is you and I both went to the theater to see the new Ghostbusters Afterlife movie. And that's what I'm excited. This isn't going to be a deep dive review because I don't remember anything that happened in that movie, or, of course I do, but I didn't jot it down scene for scene. I didn't have an opportunity to see it a second time. So I'm just kind of, trying to recall some of the things that happened. But, I think that's one of the things that I was really excited to talk about today, and the conversations that I've had with my friends so far about, what that experience was like and how they felt about this movie.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I won't bury the lead at all. I loved Ghostbusters Afterlife. I loved it, and I think I probably in the very brief conversation that you and I had, I think maybe I liked it a little bit more than you did. And in fact, I tweeted when I walked out of the theater, something to the effect of, I just laughed and cried and thoroughly enjoyed my way through the new Ghostbusters movie. I really wasn't quite sure what to expect from that movie. I was blown away, especially the way and I'm sure we'll get into it, especially the way they handled certain aspects of that movie, which I think they could have really, really fumbled, and they didn't. They handled it with some really nice, caring kid gloves, and I thought they just knocked it out of the park. I'm talking specifically about the way they handle Harold Ramis.
Sure.
It was amazing, and I can't think of a better way they could have done that.
So let's just set the stage right here for anybody who is listening, and let's just make the official spoiler alert, and let's talk about this movie, to the best that we can both recollect everything, and tell me a little bit more about, what specifically you liked about how they handled that character and how they did that.
Sorry, I appreciate the spoiler alert up top. I should have done that before I even mentioned
well,
Harold.
We hadn't spoiled anything really to that point. So
right. So yeah, basically the entire movie revolves around what we come to find out is Harold Ramis's, or Egon Spengler, his grandchildren. So his daughter and his grandchildren, they have he was estranged from his daughter, and we don't really ever quite, well, I guess we do, but from the majority of the movie, we don't really know why and we're hearing everything through her point of view and her recollection. Basically, he dies at the beginning of the movie, which candidly, I guess I just assumed that he would have been dead for several years going into this movie, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They actually showed him die.
Agreed. Yeah.
Which, again, you really didn't know it was him, but you very quickly learned that that's who it was. And really, the character of Egon, with the exception of his ghost or him doing ghostly things, you don't really see him until the final act. But when you finally do see him, I teared up. I actually teared up the way they did it. And again, we can talk about kind of that finale. There's a bunch of other things to kind of get there, but once you see the apparition of Egon, I was blown away, and it looked like him. It was him. It was the greatest way you could represent a character and an actor that isn't alive. I think it was much better than any of the way that they've done de-aging characters or even the way they did Donald Pleasance in the Halloween movie. I think this was just a better way of doing it, and I was blown away with it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I did have, spoiler alert for my review, I did have some problems with the movie, but none of those, the way they handled Egon Spengler or the character, anything that they did, all of that stuff was really interesting. And I liked that they started out with kind of telling that story about him and what he had been doing and giving us an idea. They could have started this movie just saying, oh yeah, Egon died 20 years ago. But they didn't do that. They actually took the opportunity to tell the story about what happened to him and actually show the story, not just tell it, which I thought was really good. And then at the end, the way that all came together, it was really, really sweet. And I don't have any concerns or issues with the way that they handled anything with Egon. There were a lot of nice little nods to his character throughout the movie and all kinds of callbacks to the original movie that I thought worked really well. But yeah, to me, there were a lot of things that worked really well for this movie. I guess, first of all, I think the cast was great. I think the girl that they got to play Egon's granddaughter was fantastic. I thought she was great. She sold me on every moment that she had in that movie. I thought that Paul Rudd was really good in that movie. It became very obvious at the time that the third act started that he was sort of the new Rick Moranis, they very much forced him into that role and took it from sort of general comedy to really kind of goofy really quick, I thought. But I liked him in that role. I thought he added the necessary levity in that first and second act that we really needed, because the story was a little bit of a longer story, right? Like, it took some time to develop, and we kind of kept waiting for something to happen. And that was maybe one of my first problems with the movie, is that it was kind of slow for me. Mm-hmm. It took a little while to get going. It was very intriguing, and I really wanted to know where things were going and why Egon was estranged from his family and why he was known as the dirt farmer and all that kind of stuff. But, eventually we got to a point where, we figured all that out, but it took a long time to get there. So, but, and Finn Wolfhard, I think is his name, the kid from Stranger Things, I thought he did really good. I like the young actors, even the kid Podcast, I think was his name. I thought he was great. Like, I usually don't, I sort of eye roll and groan at some of the comedic sidekicks, but I thought he complimented that group really well. And it made all their adventures along the way as we worked our way toward the end of the movie, really fun, I thought.
Yeah, there was very, very, actually very, very little of the Ghostbusters in this movie. Very little. And I didn't really even pick up on that until I was done watching it and kind of was walking away. And I guess, to your point earlier, the rest of the cast, the three kids and Paul Rudd and the gal, I can't remember what her name is.
Carrie Coon, I believe, is the actress.
Egon's daughter. They're really good, right? And so they're so good that you don't really miss the fact that the Ghostbusters aren't in, really, because they're really not in this movie.
No, this movie is not about the Ghostbusters.
No, it is not. I mean, they're there, but no, it is framed around Egon. But I
Hmm.
think, Ray gets one scene, and Pete Venkman just kind of shows up at the end, and so does Winston.
Yeah.
So it's, they're really not in this movie at all. And again, it's still a really strong movie. I'll be honest with you, it took me quite a while to kind of figure out that, one of the knocks that I've read about this movie, and I would actually agree with it, but it is, the knock is, they're just kind of retelling Ghostbusters, a la the same way that The Force Awakens retells Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that's not untrue. A lot of those beats are very, very similar. To your point, I mean, once they turn the Paul Rudd character really into Rick Moranis, I mean, those
Sure.
beats, once you get there, it's
Yeah.
really, really obvious. And I guess I was a little bit bummed out that they kind of redid Gozer, and they redid the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper, like literally, almost shot for shot.
Yeah.
But I was so invested, and I was having so much fun up until that. And I was hoping, and they did, I was hoping that I was going to get this Ghostbuster payoff at the end, that I was able to allow that kind of one down spot to slide. I was okay with it.
Okay. And that's interesting. So, I mean, again, the first act of the movie, most stories, most movies have like three acts, right? And for this one, it kind of seemed like the first act to me just kind of really carried on to the point where I'm not even really sure where the second act started and where the third act began. It seemed like, to me, almost maybe one really long first act, and then we just sort of found ourselves in the third act, and the storytellers were like, oh shit, we got to finish this up. And then it really rapidly progressed at that point. But I will say that, first of all, I guess, to go back to your comment about, sort of retelling Ghostbusters and kind of recapturing or reimagining that same story. Yeah, I mean, you can accuse them of not being very creative with that, but they did it with Force Awakens. They did it with Jurassic World. They've done it. They may end up doing it with this new Matrix movie. We don't know yet, but that's a formula that has proven to be successful.
Yeah.
At least financially, maybe not critically, but certainly financially. And so I don't have any concerns with that. But it did get to a point where it almost sort of reminded me of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake in 2010 with Jackie Earle Haley, where they were basically almost recreating shot for shot scenes from the first movie. And I don't have any issues at all with them bringing back Gozer. I thought that was super intriguing. But when they have her sort of strutting around on the same pyramid with the same two dogs and all that, it was kind of like, I feel like we really could have expanded on the mythology rather than trying to remind people what everybody really liked about the first movie. I don't think we needed that reminder. But that being said, I was forgiving everything for that, because the payoff for me the entire time from the minute the opening credits rolled was, I want to see the original Ghostbusters. I want to see how they bring these, the characters that we all know and love into this new movie. And I got to be honest, that was the biggest fault for me. That was the biggest disappointment, because I felt like they just kind of rolled them out of bed and threw their uniforms on, and it just didn't feel like they were really included in the story. They seemed like kind of glorified cameos to me, and they didn't really do anything. I think they handled Harold Ramis's character as Egon way more respectively than they did the living characters of Pete Venkman and Winston Zeddemore and Ray Stantz. They gave Ray like one extra scene, which even to me was, I don't know, like I felt like it was a little cringeworthy, because it to me that seemed like they said, okay, Dan, we're going to let you write this dialogue yourself and just kind of run with it. And it felt very similar to me, like Karen Allen's first scene in The Crystal Skull and Indiana Jones. And it seemed like actors who had not been acting for a while that just seemed too old to be doing what they were doing. And it was so sad to me. It didn't ruin the movie for me, but to be 100% transparent, like that was the thing I was waiting for. Like I wanted to see the Ghostbusters kick some ass, and I wanted to see them more intertwined in the story, say what you will about the Star Wars sequels, like they really worked hard to get Han Solo a part of that story, and Luke Skywalker and, Princess Leia, like they were all parts of those stories. Now, granted, those were 3 movies. This is one, but it was like a 5-minute cameo at the end of the movie. And it really bummed me out. Like I really wish that they would have had something to do with the actual story and not just showed up with a few one-liners at the end.
Yeah, that's a very valid criticism, especially with Venkman. Candidly, the impression that I get was that Bill Murray didn't really want to be there. You know what I mean? He was just kind of like, he was along for the ride. At least Dan Aykroyd got the scene, and I think you're probably right. That sounds like something that he would have written. I'm pretty sure he's very big into the occult and very big into kind of all that stuff. So
absolutely,
yeah. So that sounded, and you could tell, right? You could tell as he was delivering those lines. The best scene that Winston got was the post credit scene, and really, so the one scene that we get with the Ghostbusters is the showdown with Gozer, right?
Yeah.
And they redo a lot of those beats. They do the, are you a god? And of course, this time Ray says yes, and those kind of things, which again is a little cringeworthy. But at that point, I don't know. At that point, I was having so much fun that I was willing to let it slide.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah, that's the intention, right?
Yeah, right. And now I will say that I don't know how well that would have played to somebody that isn't in their mid 40s and has this kind of love and admiration for this franchise, right? I went on opening day. My middle son had the day off school, so I took him to school. I took him with me. He loved it, but he loved it for different reasons than I did, right?
Really?
Yeah. What he really loved about it was and he's not wrong. There's one scene in the beginning in that act 1 that is almost like it's a chase scene. It's where the kids are chasing this ghost through town, and you get to see Ecto, and you get to see some new.
That was a great scene.
It was amazing, and my son turned to me and he goes, "That was the best chase scene I've ever seen." And he wasn't just talking about this movie. He was, and so he was really, really pumped up about that particular scene. And again, he's not wrong. It was awesome the way they did it.
That was really good, actually. But I'll take a controversial stance and say maybe they didn't even really need the brother in that movie. Finn Wolfhard's character. Like I don't know if they even really needed him. I don't think that his character added that much. Maybe if they would have taken him out, they could have cut the movie a little bit from a timing perspective, because I think it was a 2-hour movie, and they could have focused more on trying to mix in some of the other characters. I don't know. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying in regards to Bill Murray in terms of he was actually the worst, or maybe not the worst. He was the most disappointing. Like Pete Venkman is the leader of the Ghostbusters. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And everything that he was given to deliver just felt really flat to me. And I think that's probably because he doesn't have the reverence for it that someone like Dan Aykroyd does. I mean, like Dan Aykroyd, when he dies, I think he's going to be very happy to be known as Ray Stantz from the Ghostbusters, more so than anything else he ever touched. And granted, he wrote it too. So, or he co-wrote it with, I think, Harold Ramis. So there's that piece of it. But I think Bill Murray was just sort of very blasé about it. And somebody talked him into it. And that's great, because the movie wouldn't be complete if it didn't have him in it. But at the same time, I don't know that his presence in what we saw really lended itself to any value.
No, I would agree with that, and I would also agree with your statement about they could have cut the brother. I don't think that's a controversial statement at all. I agree with you wholeheartedly. If that dude wasn't in that movie, it doesn't change the movie at all. I mean,
you needed somebody to drive, I guess, was the problem.
Okay, I guess. I mean,
so from that perspective, the mom, though. Yeah,
just as easily could have been the mom.
Yeah, I suppose. But I mean, it would be a different dynamic if it weren't all kids, right? Because this movie is clearly about children, or not children, but like, kids who are going through this anxiety with their families. And, like the mom picks them up and moves them because she has no more money, and they go off in the middle of nowhere. So it has to be a kid's story. And I understand and I respect that. So maybe maybe I even take back what I said. Like the brother needed to be there, but I think maybe they needed to do more to make us care about him rather than just him trying to find a job and get a girl to like him and things like that. Like it could have been more, I think, than that. But I don't know. I mean, these are all very nitpicky gripes. I think maybe my biggest takeaway from this movie is it was not nearly as fun as I had hoped it would be. Like, I think
that's interesting.
I would potentially, and this is, I'd have to really think about this before I commit to this idea, but I would almost watch Ghostbusters 2 before I would watch Afterlife again, just because Ghostbusters 2, as much as I do think it's kind of a terrible movie, it's fun. It's got a lot of great one-liners. They do capture at least the spirit of the first movie, if not being a pretty lame, sequel and story. But there are a lot of things about that movie that still make me smile and make me laugh. This movie was good, but I don't feel like it was as fun as the last movie. Now,
that's interesting.
I might be very wrong about that, but I think if you think of it purely from a rewatchability standpoint, I wonder if you enjoy the ride the second time through as much as you did the first time, because you talked a lot about the feels and the emotions and all that. Does all that stuff still have the same weight the second time through?
Probably not.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I'm not trying to talk you out of it.
No. I would say probably not, but I get those same feels and emotions and fun ride and rewatchability when I rewatch Force Awakens. And that's a lot of what I get from that movie too. So,
I do too.
I've only
but I think they did a better service to the characters that we know and love.
You're right. They did.
And that's why The Force Awakens, in my opinion, is more rewatchable, even though it's a direct fucking lift of A New Hope, right? It's the same movie. Right. Yeah. They even go on sand planets and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's.
Did you stick around and watch, and maybe you didn't, did you stick around and watch the post-credit scenes in Ghostbusters?
I did, thanks to you. I would not have stayed if it weren't for you, because I wouldn't have anticipated that would be a movie that would have not only one but two post-credit scenes.
So I think we mentioned Bill Murray. I think Bill Murray's best work in that movie was that post-credit scene, and I think a lot of it has to do with Sigourney Weaver. I think a lot of it has to do with that particular, like that's the version of Pete Venkman that I think of, right? The kind of messing around, irreverent, that one. And he's and the character of Pete Venkman is clearly in his element when he's with Dana. I'm sure that was a one-day thing. They were probably on the set for a couple hours to, at most, to film that. And it was probably a lot of, oh my God, Sigourney, I haven't seen you in forever and you look great, and blah, blah, blah. Let's do this for the fans and, this, that, and the other thing. And I think that came through in Bill Murray's performance there. It was a bummer that his best work and Winston's best work in that movie are post-credit scenes.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think, I'll be honest, like when I saw that, my first thought was, well, that was throwaway, which is why it was an after credit scene, right? It means nothing to the scope of this movie whatsoever. Right. But my second thought was, man, I wish we had more Sigourney Weaver. I really, really do. Like the minute I saw her face, I'm like, oh my God, like that is one of the things we're missing out of this movie is her character. And I think if they, I just wish they would have taken more time to try to mix all of that together, because it was cute, right? Like they did the reversal of the scene in the first movie where he's, zapping the nerdy guy and letting the cute girl off the hook with the cards and everything. But the scene doesn't, as a post-credit scene, it makes no sense whatsoever. It's just sort of like an Easter egg. It's not even really a deleted scene, because why would anybody film that?
It didn't make any sense. It's 100% fan service.
Yes.
That's all it is. Yeah.
And I waver on fan service, because I think fan service is a good thing. Like a lot of people criticize the Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, for being too much fan service, but I loved all the fan service they gave us in that. I loved all of it. They weren't the best movies, but I loved the fan service aspect. But this one felt more like pandering. It's more like, oh, well, we got to get something with Bill Murray. We got to get something with Sigourney Weaver. And it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't hit. But I looked at Sigourney Weaver, I'm like, oh my God, where has Sigourney Weaver been? Like, it's not been that long since I've seen an Aliens movie, and she was fucking awesome in those movies. Like, she is unbelievable actress. I think she's
And
really good and has a lot of presence. And why the hell did Annie Potts have more screen time in that movie than Sigourney Weaver?
I agree. And Sigourney looked, I mean, she looked great.
Yeah,
She aged probably better than any of them. I was
certainly better
bummed,
than Bill Murray.
certainly better than Bill Murray. I was bummed that we didn't get any Rick Moranis at all. Like he wasn't
I
even,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
we knew it though. We knew we
yeah,
weren't going to get that
yeah,
because he's basically retired from acting at this
right.
point.
So again, I want to circle back around to the Harold scenes, to the
Yeah,
Egon scenes.
yeah, please.
Um, so I did get a very big Rise of Skywalker vibe, right? So if you haven't
Yes.
seen it, I mean, like I can't be the only one that got that vibe, right? So if you haven't seen the movie, Gozer is kind of, it's the final showdown between Gozer and the Ghostbusters. She defeats the Ghostbusters, or kind of puts them on their heels, and then all of a sudden the granddaughter, Egon's granddaughter, shows up with a proton pack, and she kind of locks beams or whatever, with the proton pack and Gozer's thing. And it's very reminiscent of the Emperor and Rey, when they're at the very last scene where Rey goes, and I am all the Jedi. And I was waiting for her to say, and I'm all the Ghostbusters. And she didn't. I'm glad she didn't. But really, the reason that really kind of hit that home was, so she is I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. The granddaughter is holding on, and Gozer is starting to kind of overpower her. And you see Egon's hand come and grab onto the proton pack and to help his granddaughter. And it's the first time you see the visualization of Egon as a ghost. And then he stands with the other three Ghostbusters, and the four of them then, and it was awesome the way the other three Ghostbusters kind of looked at him. And I think it was Winston kind of looked over his kind of gave him the little side eye, and was kind of doing the what the hell's going on kind of thing. But it was just awesome. And I had tears of joy. And he never spoke, and I'm glad he didn't. He never spoke, but he was able to kind of embrace with his granddaughter. He was able to embrace with his daughter. I thought they gave a lot of really nice closure to her story. Her story wasn't great in this movie that I'm talking about, the daughter.
Yeah.
But I was glad that it got some closure there. The one question that I had was, and I don't know if you thought about this. So Egon's house, basically he was making this field that was full of ghost traps. And essentially what he had done was made a ginormous ghost trap to ultimately capture Gozer and the ghosts.
Sure.
So when they turned that on and sucked Gozer in and all the dogs and everything else, why didn't Egon's ghost get sucked into that? I don't.
No, I didn't think of that. That's probably because of convenience. I would have to say.
I guess. Yeah. But that was, but again, a super nitpicky thing. And then by that point, I had tears kind of streaming down my face, and I was all in, and I didn't even care. So
that's awesome. I wished I would have been emotionally as invested as you were. I don't think I was, just because I feel like I didn't dislike the movie, but I was let down enough by the way they handled the existing living Ghostbusters that it made it hard to really get, wrapped up in the moment of what was happening. But I agree. Like when I saw the apparition of Egon standing next to the three living Ghostbusters, and they were all firing their proton packs, like that was a huge moment. It was super emotional. It was really great. And the side eyes and all that stuff, like I recognized that too. And it was really, really great. But at that point, it was like, we're 2 hours into this movie. Like that's
right.
That's all they're giving us. Like, could they have not have done something else along the way? Again, I want to stress, like, I think it was a good movie. But to your point earlier, which I think is a really, really good one, if you weren't as invested in the original Ghostbusters, would this movie matter to you? And
Probably
I can
not.
maybe answer that with the fact that my wife, who was with me when I watched this movie, nearly passed out multiple times. It was we saw a later show, to be fair, but she doesn't have the same sort of reverence for the first movie as I do, or you do for that matter. And I think she was being a good sport about it, but when it was time to go, like it was, she was ready. I don't think she really understood or appreciated what was going on in that. And, I think that kind of says a lot about what the story is,
Mhm.
In its own little bubble.
Well, yeah, and you know what? It's funny. If you have never seen the original Ghostbusters movie, it would be really a disjointed third act of that movie.
Yeah.
Because these four dudes just show up and it's like, well, who are they? I mean, they've kind of told the story a little bit. They've done some YouTube clips and those kind of things.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that context, it would be really disjointed.
Well, to be fair, this is a sequel. So
yeah, that's
like most sequels, like you're not expected to understand or enjoy this kind of storytelling if you haven't had the context to build up to this point. It's different from the Marvel movies, which is just like this universe where there's, one continuing story, revolving around multiple characters. So yeah, I mean, I can't totally fault, my wife for not loving the movie, but at the same time, it's like she didn't get the feels at the end that we all got because we grew up with that stuff. I mean, to be fair, she was born the year that movie came out,
right.
in 1984. Yeah. So like she doesn't have the feels like, but I'd seen that movie a million times, almost literally by the time I met her. So it was different. But I mean, yeah, I guess maybe just to recap, overall, I wasn't well, maybe I was a little bit disappointed, but I didn't not have a good time. I think the thing that sort of leaves me a little bit sour is that I just don't know if I would enjoy another viewing nearly as much as I did this first one. Mm-hmm. And the reason I enjoyed the first one is because I was hanging on the edge of my seat, trying to figure out when I was going to see Pete Venkman and Ray Stantz and Winston again.
No, that's I think that's fair. I think, like I said, I enjoyed it a little bit more than you did. It certainly has its faults, and I would agree that on subsequent viewings, it probably is not going to hold up as well as, say, The Force Awakens does, because I think you're right. I think that movie, Force Awakens, does a much better job not only introducing new characters, but also giving us more fan service, for lack of a better term, throughout the movie to kind of keep us going. Yeah, no, I agree.
So back to sort of the beginning of this conversation, kind of before we started, do you feel like, this is a loaded question because I know how I feel, but do you feel that Halloween Kills sort of set you up in a way to say, I'm really excited about Ghostbusters because Halloween Kills was a sequel that we both really enjoyed? And it gave me a little inspiration that, hey, they can make good sequels again, or they can make, okay, first of all, before you answer that, I think we need to come up with a word or a phrase or some sort of terminology that defines the movie, like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull or the Halloween 2018 movie. Like those were sequels, but they were sequels for movies that happened like way, 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 way long ago. So what do we call movies that are sequels of movies that happened like 20 years in the past? Because that's almost a whole different breed of movie. It's almost like a different type.
You know what it is, but it is also becoming a very common type of sequel these days, right?
Which is why we need a categorization for it, right? So like when I saw Halloween Kills, I'm like, it restored my faith because I hadn't seen a lot of movies, and like Star Wars kind of got me really hyped with Force Awakens, and then it shit all over my face with The Last Jedi, and then Rise of Skywalker was just sort of here you go. Here's whatever. Like it did some good stuff. It was sort of obnoxious. It was whatever. But Halloween Kills really kind of made me feel like, oh, we can do this. Like this, we can make a good sequel of a sequel, and it can be entertaining. And then I sort of took that momentum into this Ghostbusters movie, hoping that it would do the same. And the initial reviews for this movie were extremely positive. And so I went into it with really high hopes, and then I kind of came out with it thinking, okay, but we've got sequels coming, right? We've got another Spider-Man in December. We've got the fourth Matrix movie that's coming out in December as well. Like, where do you stand with that? Does that impact you the same way it does me?
I have never, I never thought about it in that context. I think you're right though, in that it would be good to come up with some sort of terminology, what we, because so yes, they are sequels, but they're sequels that, there's been a boatload of time, right?
Yeah.
And here's what I think it is, quite frankly. I think it is that Hollywood understands that there are certain demographics and certain age people that are willing to still spend money in the theaters.
Yeah.
And that demographic is us. We are sitting right in the middle of that demographic. It's probably, mid to late 30s to mid to late 50s, right? If I had to kind of spitball it, because younger than that, that's really the digital age. I don't know that they're necessarily as enamored with the movie house experience or the movie theater experience as
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
And they may not have the disposable income that maybe in theory we are supposed to have as 40-something-year-old guys or gals. And I think, if you look at the movies that are doing this, right, they are kind of, were big budget, big box office smashes when we were in our teens and 20s. And so it's been 20 or 30 years. We've gone out, to your point, we've had careers, we've had children, we've gotten married, we've got some disposable income. And now Hollywood, I think, is making a very concerted effort. And they're saying, hey, what properties can we go back to, even if it's 20, 30 years after the fact, and reboot them or retell them or sequelize them or what have you, whatever it is. I saw the other day, there's another Lethal Weapon movie coming out. I saw a preview for the next Scream movie. I mean, these are, and everybody always says, oh, there's nothing unique or nothing new in Hollywood or this, that, and the other thing. Well, here's the reality, folks. When a new movie comes out, nobody goes to see it. No, people don't support them. The
Yeah.
movies that make a boatload of money are things that are sequels and are franchise movies and are tentpole movies. And it's because of, people like us, our age, that want to go back and relive when we were dating and we were going to being dropped off at the movies by our parents. That holds a lot of nostalgia. And I think that's a part of it.
So this is
that was a way longer answer than you were looking for. I'm sorry.
No. But what you did is you sort of really triggered a train of thought that I think is really important that we need to call out here. And that is, I kind of disagree with you. I think, but sort of agree with you at the same time. So I think what Hollywood is doing with these movies like Ghostbusters Afterlife or Halloween Kills or whatever is they're preying on us. I do think that we're the target audience, but not because they want us to go see the movies, but they want us to get excited about them and take our children to the movies, because their assumption or their hopes are that we will get our children turned on to these same franchises, because they don't care about my money. They care about the money that my kids are going to give them, because there's a lot more money to be had there over the next 40 years, right? Or something along those lines. I don't know if I'm articulating this very well, but basically, like, we're the gateway into that, right? We're the ones
we're the gatekeeper and the keymaster is what
we're indoctrinating our own children. Yeah. And then the younger generations into going to see movies like Ghostbusters. And what's happening, I think the reality of the situation is they're seeing these movies like Ghostbusters and even Star Wars, and they're saying, yeah, I mean, it's cool, it's all right, but it's not really a big deal. But they're counting on us as the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds and the late 30-year-olds to really drive up the hype and get the younger generations into the theaters in hopes that they do that. I think the problem is that they haven't found a good. They're still trying to find the balance of how to, appease the older generation, but yet hook the younger generation, because it's a really delicate balance. I think if you're talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife, then it's really, like, I can understand why people our generation might be a little bit bummed out about that, because they did some level of fan service, but they didn't really involve those characters. But they did a lot of stuff with the younger characters, which was really good. So like my kids and that generation are going to be interested in that movie, but they're only going to be interested in that movie because I told them to be interested in that movie because I'm a Ghostbusters fan, right? So they're using the property to get us excited so that we get the younger generations excited. But if they don't find that balance, then it doesn't work. And I don't know. I actually think Star Wars found a good balance.
I was just gonna say, Star Wars
they
actually
they weren't
through
great
that lens,
stories, but they found the balance, right?
yeah.
They had 3 movies to do it, to be fair. So Ghostbusters had one. The Halloween movies do have 3 movies that they're going to have over that period of time. But it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, and technically, so does the Jurassic Park series, right? So they had Jurassic World, they had what was the second movie? I don't know, Jurassic something, and then the last one, which is getting ready to come out, Jurassic World Dominion or whatever, which is going to bring everybody back together, the new cast and the old cast. They're really trying to merge both of these universes, but it takes a lot of talent and craftiness to be able to intertwine both worlds and keep everybody interested. I think it would be tough for sure.
Yeah, does
that make sense? Am I rambling, or does that make sense?
No, it does. It totally makes sense. And I guess what I was thinking as you were talking was, what were the types of movies that we kind of were going to in our in our teen years, and it was a lot of, there was a lot of the kind of Schwarzenegger and Stallone action movies, right?
For guys, it was action movies. It was Batman. In 1989, it was Die
Rambo,
Hard,
Commando, Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, right?
Yeah.
And every single one of those franchises had 3 or 4 movies over an 8 or 10 year period with a relatively similar cast. They were buddy cops, they were action, they were blow 'em up, they were kind of turn your brain off popcorn movies, right?
Yeah.
And then you had that, and then you had horror movies, right? So you had a slew of Friday the 13th and Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and those kind of things. And then you had either comedies or romantic comedies, right? You had the police academies. You had, things like Splash and all the rom-com movies, the stupid, right? The stupid, the mannequins of the world and like that kind of stuff where, we make fun of them, but we all know them, right? The Weekend at Bernie's and Weekend at Bernie's 2 and like that kind of stuff. And if you look at the movie landscape today, I don't know that you have those kind of as defined archetypes of movies, right? You've got superhero movies, right? You got Marvel, and then you've got some other these kind of future sequels, right? Whether they're Ghostbusters or I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but that's a long way of saying I think I agree with you, and I think Hollywood is still, I think you're right. I think they're still trying to figure out the balance of how much fan service you put in these movies to get you and I to take our kids to the movies. Yeah. And we not only have to get us interested enough and invested enough in spending our money, but they have to tell a story that is going to hook our kids for the future as well.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I think it's failing. I don't think this is working because I got to be honest. I don't see another Ghostbusters movie in the future. And of course we'll see more Star Wars movies because, no matter how people want to be critical of the sequel trilogy, each one of those made $1 billion. So there will be more Star Wars movies. I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't seen another Star Wars movie since then, but those types of properties will continue, the ones that are super lucrative mainstays like that. But like Ghostbusters, I don't know, like it's near and dear to my heart, and it will be till the day that I die, but I don't know that I see any more Ghostbusters movies.
Probably. I mean, I'm looking at Wikipedia right now. It has $75 million budget, and right now it's at $68.5 million. I mean, so yeah, it's gonna break even.
Yeah,
it's not
They'll
gonna
make money.
Yeah, but it's not going to be gangbusters, right? It's not going to be 2018 Halloween that made 800 million. Not even close.
The reason this movie got made was because they've been trying to make it for at least 2 decades at this point. They've been trying to make Ghostbusters 3 for 20 years. They've made video games, they've made animated shows, they've done all kinds of stuff. They even made that pile of shit 2016 movie, which I'm sorry, I hated that movie. I hated everything about it. Let's not turn this podcast into a review of that movie, but like they've tried, right? Because it's been on the edge of making that movie, and they finally made it, and it was good, but it wasn't great. It just didn't. I don't think it will be remembered as being great. I think it will be remembered as being a sufficient and a nice end. And maybe they'll make another movie. I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure that they will. Maybe it'll come up in some other form, like it could be a Netflix show, or it could be, who knows what the medium is going to be in the future. But I don't see this as being like, I don't see a lot of people saying, thank God they made this movie and let's go for 20 more years of Ghostbusters. Like, I don't see it. I see this as being the end.
I'll be honest with you. Even though I love this movie, I kind of hope it's done. Right.
I do too.
It would
some things need to end.
Yes.
And we need to be okay with that.
Yeah. It would be, in my opinion, the perfect send off for Harold Ramis. It would be the perfect send off for the Ghostbusters as we know them.
Yes.
And yes, there was these after credit scenes that showed Ecto 1 going back home and this, that, and the other thing. And that's fine. It can end there.
Yeah.
I don't need a movie with the kids. I don't need a movie with the daughter. Paul Rudd's great, but he's the sexiest man alive. I don't need to see him in a Ghostbusters. God, I just don't. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be honest. I mean, if they came back and said they wanted to do another Ghostbusters movie, I don't see Paul Rudd being involved. I really don't. And they could very easily, they could do it. They could make another Ghostbusters movie, but do we need one? I don't know. Like, maybe it's okay to just say we're done at this point. And then that's a whole nother conversation, maybe another podcast. Like, when is it time to say when? Indiana Jones, like, we got Harrison Ford is going to be like 97 years old when the next movie comes out. And it's like, oh my God, like, I get that they want to make money off of these properties, but at what point do we say, God, just let the man go to sleep at this point?
To answer that question specifically about that franchise specifically, the answer was after Last Crusade. That's when it was time to let it.
We should have just let it die. We should have.
That movie was fucking awesome, and it was the best way to let that character and franchise go away. And I'm going to make a weird statement here. I actually enjoyed Crystal Skull, but I didn't enjoy it as an Indiana Jones movie. I enjoyed it as kind of a silly, Saturday afternoon, like one of those kind of movies that you would catch on TBS and you'd fall asleep halfway through and that kind of thing. It wasn't a great, it was a silly movie. It was just, I thought it was a terrible Indiana Jones entry into that franchise. But again, different podcast.
Well, different podcast, but I mean, we can wax philosophical on this for a second. I think that, if it would have ended in 1989 with The Last Crusade, it would have been the most perfect
trilogy ever.
Arguably one of the most perfect trilogies ever, because it was brilliant. I'll go on record in a controversial comment to say that was the best movie. Last Crusade was the best movie, I think. A lot of people love Raiders, and I love Raiders, and I love Temple of Doom. I love them all. But I mean, there's something about The Last Crusade, top to bottom, that works so well as a really great Hollywood popcorn flick. And they just had to bring it back. And it really salted the legacy, I think, of Indiana Jones. And it wasn't a terrible movie, but if you're watching that through the eyes of you and me and everybody else in we're in our mid 40s now, but we weren't certainly back then. This was 2007, I think. So, we were still in our 30s. This, or close to, math is hard, but it was painful. Like, some of this movie was painful. And I think part of it is that in 1989, I wasn't even in high school yet. So I was still able to suspend a lot of disbelief when I'm watching these movies. But when I'm seeing, how old was Harrison Ford when he did that movie? Like in his late 60s, jump in a refrigerator and a nuclear bomb goes off.
It was terrible.
And he rolls, 500 yards and then just kind of gets out of it. I'm like, what is happening? Like, this makes no sense. Like, I get it. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you have to just sort of kind of roll with, but that was painfully hard to just kind of brush off. And okay, yeah, sure. We're also talking about the same guy who jumped out of a plane with a raft and landed on a mountain on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is equally as implausible. Although I still maintain that I feel like, I don't know, like that seemed kind of cool. Like that worked for me. But maybe as a grown adult, I just wasn't ready to suspend that disbelief. Maybe I was, but not for somebody that old. Maybe that was my biggest problem, is that he was just too old to be pulling a lot of that stuff off. And that's why this next movie fucking terrifies me.
It scares the hell out of me because I don't want to be ageist, but God damn. I mean, Han Solo was looking really old like 7 years ago in those movies. And now he's going to be really old. And I got to think the only way they're going to do that, he's almost going to be like a bit character, kind of the way the Ghostbusters were in this, right?
I don't think so. I think he's going to be the star. I don't think it's going to be an action part. Like, he better not be swinging from the rafters with his whip. But I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, but I will say that I could suspend the disbelief of almost anything except that an old man can do those things.
No,
that was just too much that I just couldn't swallow it. And then you put Karen Allen in there and it's just like, oh my God, this girl hasn't acted in 2 or 3 decades at this point. Yeah. And that, I mean, this doesn't have to turn into a chastising the Crystal Skull, but I think it lends itself to a really interesting conversation. Like, should they continue to reboot these franchises? And I know why they do, because they want our money and they want our kids' money for many, many years to come. But what they don't realize is that they haven't been able to recapture the magic that they did in the 80s when we first saw Indiana Jones on the screen. I mean, Indiana Jones is an action hero. You can't have an action hero be in his 70s. It doesn't fucking work.
No, you're right.
It just doesn't. So just let him sail off into retirement with all his Ark of the Covenant money and just be done. Right.
Yeah. When is that movie coming?
I don't know. They've delayed it so many times. I want to say 2022 at this point, which is, I don't know where they are with filming it, but I think that they have started, or maybe will start soon. I'm not sure. That one I haven't really followed for reasons. I'm too terrified. I can't.
No, I don't blame you. Harrison Ford. Yeah, he is 79 years old right now.
Oh my God. It's cringeworthy. Like, most of my family members haven't lived to that age. So like, I don't expect anybody to be able to pull that off. I mean, he did Han Solo great. But if he'd have stopped at that point, I'd have been like, okay, I'm cool. Like, they didn't ask him to do anything that required some obnoxious body double,
He shares my dad's birthday. That's kind of cool.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Different year, but same day. That's cool. Okay. I think we've covered Ghostbusters. You want to talk for a couple minutes about Survivor Series?
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, let's shoot the shit. Let's just kind of totally change direction, talk some wrestling for a minute, because we can, and this is our podcast. So why the fuck not?
Yeah. So Survivor Series is probably, of the big four WWF, WWE pay-per-views, is by far my least favorite of the four.
Of course.
WrestleMania, obviously, I think is probably the big. No, not probably, is the biggest one. Royal Rumble is my favorite though.
That's a close second. I think the Royal Rumble is more creative, but WrestleMania is the Super Bowl, right? So we have to love that one the most. But the Royal Rumble is probably the best, or the most intriguing in terms of the stakes and the types of matches and everything.
Yeah. So I went to the Browns game on Sunday, this past Sunday, and I tailgated, and so I got home after the game, and the kind of, the way what happens when you come home from a tailgate, you're just like exhausted and you lay down and you're tired. And so I did that.
And maybe a little buzzed up.
Maybe a little bit.
Tiny bit. I saw some of your pictures.
It was fun. We had a good time. but Survivor Series was on that night, so I came in late, and I know you were watching at the beginning, so I still have not gone back to see the Becky Lynch Charlotte Flair match,
dude.
and I know there were reasons that I need to go watch that match, and
there are reasons that we
yes.
probably I shouldn't divulge on this podcast, but
right,
yes, it was the best match of the entire card, to be honest.
Was it real? Okay,
yeah,
was it?
I think well, to be fair, I did not see the very last match. That's the one match I did not see. I did not see Roman Reigns versus Big E, which I heard was really good.
It was great. Yeah.
But the Becky Charlotte match, which Charlotte might be my favorite wrestler, period, right now. I just think she's phenomenal, and everything she brings to the table is amazing and has a lot of grandeur to it. That match was really, really good. Sometimes I don't love Becky, but this match was really solid.
Okay. Yeah. I can't really speak to it. I love Becky Lynch. I love everything about her character. I think she's beautiful. And so
watch this match.
I know.
Please watch this match. If anything, just because she's beautiful.
Because she's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially here.
But I would agree though. I think Charlotte Flair, I think she's probably going to go down as
the best. Absolutely.
The best ever, right? She's going to be like her dad.
The best women's, the best female wrestler ever. Yeah. One of the best wrestlers ever, to be honest. Like, take the female part out of it. Like, she's fantastic. And I don't think anybody, even now and probably as of years ago, holds a candle to what she's doing. I really don't.
Yeah. I mean, she really is kind of in a league of her own. And one of the things that and I think this is probably part of the reason I don't really care for Survivor Series as a pay-per-view, especially now that they've done this brand split. So they've got all these kind of champion versus champion matches, but the titles aren't on the line, which always kind of bums me out. I mean,
stupid.
You see some good matches, but it's like, okay, so Becky's going to go back to Raw.
No stakes.
No stakes. And so I don't know. It kind of devolves a little bit into, okay, well, it's a Raw match or it's a SmackDown, and I don't watch Raw anymore and I don't watch SmackDown anymore because there's no stakes and there's so many fucking pay-per-views. There's one a month or whatever, and if I'm able to watch one pay-per-view and that's a lot. Yeah. So I think that's probably part of the reason. I will say, and again, it's like so the best match for you was the match that I didn't see, and then the best match for me was the match that you didn't see.
That's cool.
Roman Reigns and Big E was a really good match, and so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about not necessarily this match, but where we think they're going specifically with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns for years and years was the baby face that everybody hated.
Legit
hated, right? He was the, they were trying to make him into the Hulk Hogan or the John Cena or, insert babyface A here, right? That just everybody loved. And it backfired. But what that did was when they finally turned him heel, it made him into a monster heel, just an absolute monster, and he's done a great job. And I will be honest with you, I was a big fan of him as a face. I'm a bigger fan of him now as a heel. So I have loved what he has done. Now he has held that particular title for over 400 almost 50 days or whatever it is.
Yep.
I'm of the opinion, and I want to see what you think about this. I think they're headed towards Roman Reigns versus The Rock.
Yes.
I think that's where they're going. And I think they're going there not at this WrestleMania. I think they're going there next WrestleMania, because that WrestleMania, I think, is going to be in Hollywood next WrestleMania.
Remind me, where's this coming WrestleMania going to be? I think
next year or this year in 2022, WrestleMania is going to be in Dallas. Next year, WrestleMania, I believe, is going to be in Hollywood. That's why I think they're going to push this off, and they're going to go. And here's why I think this. So we know in quote unquote real life, The Rock and Roman are actually in the same family. I think they're cousins or second cousins or what have you.
They're cousins. Yeah.
Yeah. they're really playing up this Roman is the head of the table, the head of the family, the top dog, the this, that, and the other thing. I can totally foresee, he holds on to this title for 500 days, 600 days, whatever it is. And Rock comes out and says, listen, motherfucker, you're not the head of the family. I'm the head of the family. I think that's where they're going.
I absolutely agree with you. I don't think it's going to take that long, though. I don't think because if what you're saying, if I'm understanding what you're saying, he's going to hold on to the title for at least another year after this coming WrestleMania. And I don't see them doing that because I feel like people would get way too fucking bored with that. Like, I just don't see us being able to tolerate the same guy having the belt for the next year. That's where I think the major rub is. And I think he shows up at this WrestleMania, but I think Reigns beats him. I don't think that they let The Rock take the title off of him, because that, in my opinion, that would be a mistake. Like, he's not a full-time wrestler. Why the fuck would you even bother doing that? I think that they set it up to make everybody in the world think that The Rock's coming out of the clouds to be the savior and to take the belt and to squash Roman, and he doesn't do it. So I'm not sure when he actually gives up the belt or who he gives it up to, but I don't even think it's The Rock. I think it's the greatest swerve ever, because they're putting him through John Cena. They put him through all these, Brock Lesnar, right? Like, Brock Lesnar's not done yet. I think he's going to end up facing him at Rumble probably, because he came back, but yeah. I could see a rematch with Brock at this point. But I think that they bring The Rock back, but they don't let him go over. I mean, it would make no sense. Why would you give Rock the belt?
I suppose the other thing you could do is you could have Rock come out and cost him the title.
You could, sure.
You could do that. You could do that too, right? And then you've got at least a couple month program with Rock and Roman, and then you could turn around, 3, 4, 6 months later and put Roman back in the title picture with whoever holds the title at that point.
Yeah, you could. I think. I wonder if whoever wins at that point would have the same validity, because I think what they've done to this point is they've built up Roman to be one of the greatest heels of all time. And I think that that's pretty legit. So to have him lose in an unclean fashion would be a bit of a disservice, right? Like, because in theory, what we're saying is the longer we build up Roman, the more that we're going to be pushing the person who's going to get the belt, right? So it would do a little bit of a disservice to whoever gets the belt to have them win in an unclean fashion, right? Like, it needs to be a clean win. And that person at that point should be the next greatest face superstar in the business, because he's beaten the heel who has had the title for, I don't know, is he the longest running title holder at this point? I mean, if he's not, he will be by the time he loses it.
Well, so I would agree with that. And here's where I'm going to here's where being a wrestling fan for 30 some years actually, I think, might work against me. I would agree with everything you just said, except for if you go back and you think about the greatest face champion of all time, Hogan. It was Hulk Hogan. It was Hulk Hogan, right?
Sure.
And he held that title for over 3 years, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
And then they took him off. They took the title off him with 2 Dave Hebners, and it was like a throwaway. That's how they got the title off him. That's how he lost that title.
Yeah, I think at that point they were trying to mix things up a little bit. That's how Savage got the title and kept it for like a year, and then they decided, nope, Hogan's not done yet, and they gave it back to him. And they kind of, and then the Warrior took it off of him. And
well, no, so they took it off him. The 2 Dave Hebner thing was with Andre the Giant,
right before WrestleMania 4.
Was that after 4?
No, it was before 4. It was after 3. So Hogan had already beat Andre at the Silverdome, and then the 2 Dave Hebner thing happened right here in Indianapolis at a Saturday night's main event.
And then there was Tuesday in Texas.
And that's what created no. Tuesday, Texas was Undertaker.
That was Taker. Sorry. Yeah.
That's what created the tournament at WrestleMania 4, because they basically created this storyline where it's like, well, we don't know who okay, so we're stripping Andre the title. We don't, Hogan got beat, but Andre doesn't deserve it. So we don't know who gets it. So we create this tournament at WrestleMania 4, and that's how Savage gets the belt. And then Savage turns heel eventually, and that's how Hogan gets it back at WrestleMania 5.
Okay.
So I see what you're saying, because Hogan did have it for a long time in the 80s, but I think things have changed, and I don't think that they're going to keep the title on somebody for that long unless they're going to give it to the next anointed person.
See, the problem is there isn't that person. That's the problem.
Right. And I feel like maybe they're just buying their time. They're waiting for whoever that is. And I got to be honest, I don't know who it is. Like,
I don't know either.
I don't think that person is there right now. It's Riddle. I don't know who it is, right? Like
Riddle. Maybe that's where they give Cena his 17th title.
I would love to see that, but they already put him in front of Reigns.
Yeah.
So what good would that do? Like, I don't know. Like, I think they're going to have to, they're kind of painting themselves in a corner, because whoever beats Reigns has to be the fucking next big thing.
The man.
It can't be Cena, because Cena's, he's The Rock. He
looks like Ernest at this point.
Well, he grows hair in a very awkward way. That's for sure. But he's not a full-time wrestler, and he never will be again. And that's fine. You can't give him that belt in that way, but you got to find the next guy. And I don't know if they know who that is yet.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's interesting.
Well, all right. Well, hey, we have rambled on here, what, an hour and a half, something like that. We chatted about some Ghostbusters. We did some movies. We did some wrestling. What else?
We'll call this our potpourri podcast.
There you go.
Right. This is a little bit of everything, a little mix of all kinds of things. This is one of the ones that we had a very, very small agenda coming into, and we just managed to bullshit for about an hour and a half on kind of goofy stuff the whole time.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I guess, calling it the potpourri is very appropriate the night before Thanksgiving. So I hope you have a wonderful holiday tomorrow with your friends and your family. Thank you, everybody who is listening, for hanging out with us for a while this evening. This has been the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie. I've been joined once again by Mr. Pip. Have a good evening, brother. I love you.
Love you more. Happy holidays to everybody. Thanks for listening.
And we will talk to you soon. And I promise it'll be sooner than a month in between the last episode.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good evening, folks. Bye.